Sergeant Preston of the Northwest Mounted Police with Yukon King, swiftest and strongest lead dog breaking the trail in the relentless pursuit of lawbreakers in the wild days of the Yukon. Back to the days of the gold rush as Sergeant Preston with his wonder dog Yukon King meets the challenge of the Yukon. This is the Yukon, the territory patrolled by Sergeant Preston, where the white beauty of winter was in sharp contrast with the black-heartedness of the criminal element. The Evergreen Trail out of Glenboyle, a winter route much used by freighters making deliveries to the north. A freight sled of the Apex Freight Company, driven by Frank Townsend and his co-dog puncher Jim Elliott, had just left Glenboyle, headed for Dawson with a load of precious furs.
Hold it. Hold it there, I'll shoot. You, get out of the sled and stand next to your partner.
Better do as he says, Jim.
That's right, friend. Take it easy. Nothing's going to happen. Old Joe and I went to the sled, and what's on it?
Robbers.
How did you ever guess? All right, let's get started, Joe.
Jim, no, Jim.
I told him to take it easy.
He's dead.
He had it coming. You try anything and you get the same. All right, let's clear out of here, Joe.
Hey! He'll pay for it, Jim. I swear, he'll pay.
This is a description of the murderer, as given to me by Mr. Townsend. He's given us only a very sketchy description of the other robber.
Jim Elliott never harmed a soul. Killing him. So useless, so meaningless.
This is a very accurate description, Mr. Townsend. 5'10", 180 pounds, red hair and brown eyes.
Every time I close my eyes, Sergeant, I see his face. And I won't rest until he's caught.
Constable, does this description remind you strongly of anyone?
It certainly does. Harry Lewis.
I was thinking the same thing. Harry Red Lewis. Thanks. Based on your description, Mr. Townsend, he's our man, all right. Now all that's necessary is for me to bring him in and for you to make the identification.
If he's the man, I'll identify him all right.
Sergeant Preston lost no time in going to Harry Lewis's cabin 15 miles southwest of Glenboyle. Keeping in mind Lewis's record and reputation as a quick trigger, Preston approached the cabin with utmost caution.
Here we are, Lewis. Move away from the table. Get your hands up.
Well, Sergeant Preston, what a pleasant surprise. Just in time for some grub.
Quiet, King.
Not very friendly, either of you.
I'm arresting you in the name of the Crown, Lewis.
For what?
Suspicion of murder.
You're making a fool of yourself, Sergeant. You've got the wrong man.
According to the statement given by the witness, you're the right man.
You've got it all wrong, I tell you.
All right, we'll see. Get into these. I'm taking you into Glenboyle for identification, and don't try anything on the way.
Try anything? Why should I? I've got nothing to worry about, Sergeant. Absolutely nothing, I guarantee.
All right, let's go then.
Sergeant Preston returned with his prisoner to Glenboyle the following morning. Frank was notified to appear that morning at the police station to make identification.
Oh, no, I've had enough. Thanks, Helen.
But, Frank, you haven't touched the rest of your breakfast.
Food is the last thing on my mind. You understand?
Yes, dear. It's a pity. Jim Elliott was such a fine young man.
Maybe I could have done more. That man, Red Lewis, I could kill him. I could kill him myself for what he did to Jim.
I've never heard you talk this way.
Maybe there are things about me that even you don't know.
You'll feel better after you make the identification. Oh, please come in, Mr. Walton.
Good morning, Mrs. Townsend. Frank?
Hello, Mr. Walton.
I understand you're due at the police station shortly.
Yes.
Well, I'm going too. I thought we'd walk along together.
Fine.
As I told Sergeant Preston, as manager of the freight depot, I'm interested in seeing that justice is done.
I'll see you later, dear.
Goodbye, Mrs. Townsend.
Bye, Mr. Walton.
Oh, Frank, I wanted to talk to you about the identification of Jim Elliott's killer.
If Red Lewis is the man, I'll identify him, all right.
Oh, he's the man, all right. There's no doubt about it. But, you're not gonna identify him.
What did you say?
I couldn't make it any clearer. You're not gonna identify Red Lewis. As I said inside, I got a big stake in this affair, and I'm gonna make sure I'm protected. You're gonna tell Preston Red is not the killer of Jim Elliott.
You're in with them, Red and the other robber.
No. They're in with me. I tell them what to do.
Running a robbing operation from the inside.
Perfect arrangement, isn't it? I give them orders. And now I'm giving orders to you.
You think I'm going to let my best friend's killer go free just because you say so?
Let me tell you about a young man in Quebec who served time for manslaughter. After he served his time, he came west to try to hide his past. Did a good job of it, too. He settled down, got himself some good jobs around the Yukon as a dog puncher. A few years ago, he married a very nice girl. Much younger than he, but very devoted to him. That's the story.
How did you know?
Part of my job as manager of the Glen Boyle Depot. You can't be too careful when you're shipping valuable merchandise. Gotta make a check on all my drivers. And Frank, I knew that you were the kind of driver I'd be needing for my inside operation.
It still isn't going to do you any good, Walton.
Oh, isn't it? What chance do you think you'd have getting a job if your record was known? Another thing. Did you ever tell Mrs. Townsend about your past? Ever tell her about the sentence for manslaughter? Of course you didn't. You wouldn't want to take a chance of losing her or your job. Well, Frank, nobody has to know. Just as long as you follow orders. I'll let you walk alone so you can think it over on your way to the police station. I'll see you there later.
This is the man, Mr. Townsend. This is Red Lewis. According to your description, he's the man that shot and killed Jim Elliott. Now, all that remains is for you to make a positive identification. Mr. Townsend?
Well,
maybe it's the angle. Turn the other way, Lewis.
well, he looks like him. Yes, I'll admit he looks like the killer.
You said you'd never forget his face.
He certainly fits the description you gave Sergeant Preston.
Well, Mr. Townsend?
I said he looked like him.
That isn't enough. The identification must be positive.
It shouldn't be hard, Frank, to identify him either way. After all, there's a lot at stake here. You know that.
Tell him to keep out of this.
I'll handle this, Mr. Walton.
Okay, Sergeant, I was just trying to help.
Well, Mr. Townsend, is he or isn't he the man?
I can't say now. I just can't say.
But you must say.
You don't want me to identify the wrong man, do you?
No, of course not. Please take another look at him, Mr. Townsend. And tell me positively, is he the man or isn't he the man that killed Jim Elliott?
He is not the man who killed Jim.
All right, Constable. Prisoner's free to go.
I told you you had the wrong man, Sergeant. Take him. Should teach your dog not to growl at innocent people.
Well, Sergeant, I'm sorry you didn't get the right man, but I'm sure if you keep on trying, you'll find him. It'll mean a lot to me.
Yeah.
Oh, Frank, I know what you've been through. Take the day off. Spend it with Mrs. Townsend.
I'm sorry, Sergeant. Sorry I put you to all that trouble.
It's all right, Townsend. Constable, what do you know about Frank Townsend?
Why, he came here to Glen Boyle over a year ago from Dawson. Upstanding, reputable citizen.
Check with Dawson on the telegraph. See what you can find out about him.
Right away. It's strange. Townsend's description was so accurate. Then he couldn't identify him. Why, even King was suspicious of Lewis.
I've never known King to be wrong.
What do you make of it, Sergeant?
I don't know. I don't know. I intend to find out.
Walton, I want to talk to you.
Well, Frank, I didn't expect to see you until tomorrow morning. I told you to take the day off.
I said I wanted to talk to you.
Bob, go out in the yard and see how that loading job for Little Bear is coming along, huh?
Now, look, Walton.
I'm glad you dropped in, Frank. I wanted to talk to you, too. I wanted to thank you for the splendid job you did at the police station this morning.
I'd like to kill you.
Temper. Remember the trouble it got you into back in Quebec when you were young and wild? You're a grown man now, Frank, with a good reputation and a wife that's proud of you.
I'm quitting, Walton. Getting out of Glenboyle.
Oh, no, Frank. You're staying on the job.
Not me.
As a matter of fact, I've scheduled you to drive a load of tobacco to the trading post at Fort Wembley tomorrow.
I said I'm through.
The way I've arranged it, Red and Joe will meet you at the same place along the trail at Big Pine. That's 5 miles from Wembley. You'll stagger into the fort on foot and tell them how you were robbed and beaten.
I did what you wanted. I let Red Lewis off. We're quits now, Walton.
We're quits when I say we're quits. Unless you want your wife to find out. And unless you want to stay out of work permanently.
That was Dawson on the telegraph, Sergeant, replying to the inquiry on Frank Townsend.
And?
Well, he arrived in the Yukon over 10 years ago from Quebec. Never any trace of trouble connected with him in this territory. They are relaying the inquiry on to Quebec. They'll forward the reply to us as soon as it comes in. So I guess we'll just have to wait.
Well, we may not have to wait until then, Constable.
What do you mean?
Well, I just learned from one of the other freight drivers that Frank Townsend's driving a sled load of valuable tobacco to the trading post at Fort Wembley. And he's scheduled to leave within the hour.
Oh? You think lightning can strike twice in the same place?
Possible. Anyway, King and I are going to trail him en route to see if he makes any unscheduled stops. They have this.
Frank Townsend, driving a freight sled loaded with tobacco, took the Eagle Trail northwest to Fort Wembley. Townsend was unaware that from the time he left Glenboyle, he was under Sergeant Preston's surveillance. For the first 6 hours, everything went according to schedule. Then, less than 10 miles from his destination, Townsend turned his team off the trail and cut into a wooded and untraveled area.
Well, King, seems Townsend's planning an unscheduled stop after all. Going off the main trail into the woods. An unscheduled stop to rendezvous with the robbers, unless I miss my guess.
But to Preston's surprise, Frank Townsend, after making a wide semicircle, returned to the Eagle Trail just a few miles outside of Fort Wembley. Preston continued trailing Frank Townsend to the trading post at Fort Wembley.
Delivering the cargo to the trading post as scheduled. Sure curious about that long detour he took. Boy, we'll keep watching and see what he does now.
Frank, you home so soon?
Morning, Mrs. Townsend.
Who are you?
That's not important, Mrs. Townsend. Nice piece of glassware. Brought it from home, didn't you?
What do you want?
I want you to deliver a message to your husband. Tell him next time he's ordered to do something, he'd better do it. Next time, no sidetracks, no detours. Tell him next time, delivery as scheduled. That's the message. And just to make sure he understands, tell him this is only a sample of what'll happen if he doesn't follow orders.
Stop it! Stop it! Get out of our house!
Next time, it'll go much worse for you. And for him.
Just a minute, Townsend.
Sergeant Preston.
Planning a trip?
Trip? Why, no,
Just
just...
no use lying, Frank. I saw you arrange for passage just now.
Well, all right. My wife and I are going to Skagway for a vacation. I don't see that's any of your business.
You're the witness to an unsolved murder. You've no right to leave Glenboyle without police permission.
I told you Red Lewis wasn't the murderer. What more do you want from me?
Several things. For instance, why did you make that detour yesterday on the trip to Fort Wembley?
How did you know?
I followed you, there and back. Right now, we're going out to your house. And you and I and your wife are going to talk this all over. Come on, let's go. Monkey.
When Sergeant Preston and Frank Townsend arrived at the Townsend home, they found Frank's wife sitting dazedly among the wreckage of her home. She managed to pull herself together sufficiently to tell them what had happened, and then went to her room to rest after the ordeal.
This reply from Quebec on the tracer regarding Frank Townsend just came in from Dawson. I saw you headed this way. I thought I'd better bring it over.
Thanks, Constable.
Speaks for itself, doesn't it?
Yes, it does.
How's Mrs. Townsend?
Shaken, but she'll be all right after a few hours' rest.
Oh, good. Well, I better get back to the station.
She never hurt anyone. Doing a thing like that to my Helen. Doing such a terrible thing. But they'll pay for it. I'll see to that. I'll see that the one accountable will pay.
Don't you think you've done enough on your own? You've been very foolish hiding the truth from me. If you'd told it in the beginning, perhaps none of this would have happened. I understand now why you wouldn't identify Red Lewis.
What?
Just received a message from Quebec about you, about your past, about the sentence you served for manslaughter. Didn't want your wife to know about that, did you?
No, I didn't want to lose her.
And the robbers were using this information as moral blackmail.
Yes.
We planned another robbery on that load that was shipped to Fort Quimby yesterday. Only you took a detour to avoid them.
That's right.
Been trying to fight them yourself, Frank. Can't you see now that this is a matter for the police?
I see one thing. They're going to pay. Especially one of them.
If you really want to see justice done, you can help me, Frank. Will you?
I want justice done, all right.
All right. According to the information we got from your wife, they're planning on making use of you again. Only this time, follow their orders. No detours. Plan meeting them on schedule. And I'll be on hand to make the arrest. Agreed?
You bet, Sergeant. And I can hardly wait for that meeting.
Now, let's clean this up.
Yes.
Too bad about what happened to your house, Frank. But some things are unavoidable. That one was. Know what I mean?
Yes, Walton. I know what you mean.
But that's past. Let's talk about the future. Friday, to be exact. You're scheduled to drive another load of furs to Dawson. The The rendezvous will be 5 miles this side of Silver Hill. Is that clear?
Clear. You don't have to worry. I'll show up as scheduled.
Fine. I'm happy to see you're so positive about it. Now, let's let bygones be bygones, huh?
Frank Townsend, as scheduled, drove the sled straight for his rendezvous with the robbers.
Whoa, boy, whoa!
Well, Townsend, glad to see you're back on schedule.
I wouldn't have missed getting here for the life of me.
Now you're talking sense.
You're the one who wrecked our cabin, aren't you, Red?
Just following orders.
I thought so.
No hard feelings.
And you're the one who killed Jim Elliott.
Hey, what's wrong? Why are you asking me that? You saw me kill him. Let's get down to business. Joe and I are taking this sled and its cargo. You hike onto the trading post at Silver Hill and tell him you've been robbed. That's all there is to it.
There's more.
More? What do you mean?
He means me. I arrest you both in the name of the Crown.
Why, you...
Hold it! Frank told me the whole story, but I wanted direct evidence. Hold it, Frank!
But, Sergeant, he
can't get far.
All right, Lois, back where you started. Unless you want to tangle with King.
I told you they wouldn't get far. On your feet.
Constable Wilson was along all the way.
And King. A second line of defense just in case I needed it.
Well, Sergeant, all present and accounted for.
Thanks to you and King. Put the handcuffs on him.
You won't be needing me any longer, Sergeant. You have what you want, and I'm anxious to get back to Glenboyle.
I understand. Frank, thanks for everything.
You're more than welcome. On, boys. On, you Huskies.
Where's my team, Constable?
Just up at the top of the ridge.
Where's yours, Lewis?
Back in the trees.
Take them back to town on their team, Constable. I'm as anxious to get into Glenboyle as Townsend.
Right. Let's go.
Come on, King.
You're not finished here yet, Walton.
Frank, what are you doing back in Glenboyle?
Came to make a special report directly to you.
Something happened. Something went wrong.
For you, all wrong. Red and Joe are on their way back here now in Preston's custody.
What?
Preston was there at the rendezvous.
How did it happen?
Preston arranged it.
What?
With me.
You? Well, what are you talking about?
I told Preston everything. All the facts except one. You.
Well, that's good, Frank. Good. Look, I'll make another arrangement with you. I'll pay anything you ask, just to keep me out of it. Red won't talk, Joe won't neither. Just name your price.
I'm not handing you over to Preston until you pay for the pain you caused my wife.
Frank, wait.
I've waited too long already.
I know how you feel, King. We'll give Frank Townsend a few more minutes alone with Walton. Seems to me he's entitled to it.
Come on, there's more coming to you, Walton. Get up. Come on, I'm not finished yet.
Oh, yes, you are. You're finished now, Townsend.
Drop that gun, Walton. Drop it. You're under arrest in the name of the Crown for conspiracy and aiding and abetting a murder. Put your hands behind you.
You followed me here, Sergeant.
And I had a hunch you were holding out on something.
I didn't tell you about him purposely. I wanted to settle my own score with him first.
I can understand that. I'm sure your wife will understand whenever you're willing to tell her your story.
I'm ready now, Sergeant, if I'm free to go to her.
You're free in every way now, Frank. Good luck.
Thanks, Sergeant.
Well, King, this case is closed.